My understanding of what that means is not just the freedom to speak. It's a freedom to speak truth to power.
I'll explain how Amber is avoiding the questions and how much of what she's saying is unreliable. This video will show principles from statement analysis. This method's used to detect possible deception. If you'd like to see more videos, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell for all updates. Also, you can check out my other videos about this case and many other cases.
Do you stand by your testimony and your accusations against Johnny Depp?
Of course, to my dying day, will stand by every word of my testimony.
Statement analysis is critical of stilted language, like "to my dying day." Stilted language isn't necessarily deceptive, but should be taken into account. Subjects often use mild oaths and idioms to make their statements sound more convincing. Next, Amber still blames social media. She doesn't allow evidence to be the main reason why she lost.
I think vast majority of this trial was played out on social media. I think that this trial is an example of that gone haywire, gone amok, and the jury is not immune to that.
You think the jury saw it?
How could they not? I think even the most well-intentioned juror, it would have been impossible to avoid this.
For someone as proud as Amber, it's easier to admit defeat to things that are out of her control, social media, than evidence. Next, Amber mentions the vitriol she faced, which functions as an appeal to pity. Also, she devalues Johnny by referring to him as Captain Sparrow. Again, it's easier to admit defeat to popularity than evidence.
Every single day I passed for 3, 4, sometimes 6 blocks, city blocks lined with people holding signs. After 3.5 weeks, I took the stand and saw just a courtroom packed full of Captain Jack Sparrow fans who were vocal, energized.
Can you put into words how that felt?
This was the most humiliating and horrible thing I've ever been through. I have never felt more removed from my own humanity. I felt less than human.
Amber blames Johnny's attorneys.
My evidence was largely kept out. Really important pieces of evidence kept out. Done differently, handled differently by a judge instead of a jury.
Some evidence is admissible in a UK court that is not admissible in a US court. Do you think that maybe he just had better lawyers?
I will say his lawyers did certainly a better job of distracting the jury from the real issues.
She did the same in her written reaction to the verdict. She's careful not to impute ill intentions to the jury. Therefore, she makes the lawyers the grammatical subject, the active agent in the sentence. She puts the jury in the same underdog position as she will have people believe she's in. This is my full analysis of her reaction to the verdict. Link is in the description. Next, notice how Amber adds a subtle but important change to the interviewer's question.
For some people, they just were frankly disgusted by the whole thing and don't have much sympathy for either one of you. Can you understand that?
Absolutely. I would not blame the average person for looking at this and how it's been covered and not think that it is Hollywood brats at their worst.
Initially, this looks like Amber agreeing with the interviewer, but it's not. She was asked if she understands why some people were disgusted by the whole thing and didn't have sympathy for either of them. This question is obviously sensitive to Amber, so sensitive that she feels the need to modify it by saying that you wouldn't blame the average person for thinking this.
And how it's been covered.
As she adds, this subtle change is called the positive resistance dimension. It's when a subject modifies certain words for self-interest. Politicians do this all the time as well. Linguistically, this minimizes Amber's attempt to sound in full agreement with the interviewer.
Absolutely.
Next, Amber performs association, associating with other people, as if this isn't just about her, but about them also.
But what people don't understand is it's actually so much bigger than that. This is not only about our First Amendment right to speak.
The conjunction but also undermines Amber's preceding assurance,
Absolutely.
as it emphasizes the following sentence and minimizes the previous, and the associating possessive pronoun our is her attempt to make it seem like everyone else is in the same boat. Next, Amber teaches us about freedom of speech.
But here's the thing about the First Amendment. The First Amendment protects free speech. It doesn't protect lies that amount to defamation. And that was the issue in the case.
Yes, exactly. You can't go into, the free speech does not protect you if you go into a crowded theater and you scream fire. We get the concept of free speech from the Greeks. My understanding of what that means is not just the freedom to speak. It's a freedom to speak truth to power.
But truth is the word.
Yes.
And that was the issue.
And that's all I spoke. And I spoke it to power, and I paid the price.
She finally shifts to the possessive pronoun my when talking about her understanding of freedom of speech. This is noteworthy because this is after she's made generalizing comments about what freedom of speech is not and taught us about Greece. Implicitly, she shows that she's aware that her definition of freedom of speech is just that, her definition. She's aware of sounding humble after all. And she also appeals to the underdog position that I mentioned earlier. She's speaking up to power, as she calls it. And from her written reaction, we know who she includes in this power: Johnny. Next, she ridicules Johnny and his legal team in an overt manner.
In the closing arguments, the DEP lawyer called your testimony the performance of a lifetime and said you were acting. What do you say to that?
Says the lawyer for the man who convinced the world he had scissors for fingers. I'm the performer. I had listened to weeks of testimony insinuating that, or saying quite directly that, I'm a terrible actress. So I'm a bit confused how I could be both.
This shows us the contempt that she has inside, but that she's been trying to hold back. She doesn't deal with the question. Instead, she tries to avoid it by deliberate vowel stress and deliberate pauses. The vowel stress and pauses make this a ridiculing statement, once again devaluing Johnny and his legal team. It's an ad hominem, as it's directed at the person, not the position this person's maintaining. Also, it's a strange reaction, because this could also be said about her, that because she convinced someone she was Mera in Aquaman, we can't believe her. Additionally, the statements performance of a lifetime and terrible actress aren't mutually exclusive, as Amber implies. Logically, even terrible actresses can give a performance of a lifetime. There's nothing about the expression performance of a lifetime that indicates that it has to be good actresses giving it. Therefore, this isn't a contradiction. Next, Amber performs association again, but this time it's a lot more revealing.
The DEP team argued that you instigated, did you?
I never had to instigate it. I responded to it. When you're living in violence and it becomes normal, as I testified to, you have to adapt.
She says your and you. She doesn't use personal pronouns. In statement analysis, pronouns are considered important because pronouns are largely intuitive. Pronouns are one of the first things we learn in life. What's mine, what's yours, what's his, what's hers, and so on. Therefore, there's a reason for the pronouns people choose in a second or split second. Amber chooses pronouns that point away from her, away from the negative experiences that she claims to have had. Almost as if she forgot, she inserts the sentence, as I testified to, before she then goes back to the generic you. Furthermore, the expression, as I testified to, points to what she did in court. It doesn't point back to the experience that she claims to have had in the relationship. Overall, this is distancing language. It's also called lack of self-reference, minimizing reference to oneself. You can learn more about lack of self-reference in this video. Link is in the description. Next, the interviewer gets to the heart of the issue. and Amber's answers are impressively evasive. First, she tries to downplay the validity of the tapes, and she continues with the generic you rather than I. Once again, lack of self-reference.
You say you were responding, but there is evidence. There are tapes. There are tapes in which you say, I started the fight.
I know much has been made of these audio tapes. They were first leaked online after being edited. What you would hear in those clips are not evidence of what was happening. It was evidence of a negotiation, of how to talk about that.
Then, when the interviewer presses her, she makes it sound like the tapes were her taking blame for things that she shouldn't have taken blame for.
But I am looking at a transcript that says, he says, you start physical fights, and you say, I did start a physical fight. I can't promise you I won't get physical again. I mean, this is in black and white. I understand context. But you're testifying and you're just telling me today, I never started a physical fight, and here you are on tape saying you did.
As I testified on the stand about this, is that when your life is at risk, not only will you take the blame for things that you shouldn't take the blame for, psychologically, emotionally, and physically, you don't have the resources that, say, you or I do with the luxury of saying, hey, this is black and white, because it's anything but when you're living in it.
Amber keeps repeating,
as I testified on the stand about this,
in theory, and very likely only in theory. This strengthens her ethos and makes it sound like the question didn't catch her off guard. She doesn't say that her life was at risk or that she took the blame for things. She keeps saying your life and you take blame for things. And considering Amber's behavior in court, taking the blame for things wasn't exactly her strong suit. This observation makes it even more doubtful that she showed this kind of accountability in her relationship. Amber knows how to use all the right trigger words, psychologically, emotionally, physically. This is an appeal to emotion, as many actual victims will have an instant emotional reaction to these words. Amber is good at imitating, good at adjusting her behavior to the interviewer's questions. When one explanation doesn't work, she tries another one.
But then there are other times, there's another tape where you're taunting him and saying, oh, tell the world, Johnny Depp, I, a man, am a victim.
20-second clips or the transcripts of them are not representative of even the 2 hours or the 3 hours that those clips are excerpt from.
This part of the interview shows Amber's proud personality. She puts herself above the jury and effectively the legal system by stating that it's the length of the excerpts that determine the truth value, which is, of course, a non sequitur. Nevertheless, her assertive language shows that she has no doubts about this. However, when the interviewer asks the obvious question if a legal team could have put the whole 3 hours in, Amber suddenly shifts from sounding assertive to sounding humble, and she's again appealing to emotion and pity, how much emotional stress that she was allegedly under.
Could your side have just put the whole 3 hours in then?
I'm not a lawyer. As I testified to, I was talking in those recordings as a person in extreme amount of emotional, psychological, and physical distress.
She continues to show a low opinion of the people who were there to evaluate her, as she keeps making Johnny a symbol of power.
What about the witnesses who said they have seen you instigate?
I've seen firsthand how people will file rank and support the person they depend on.
She answers indirectly because she doesn't want to defame the witnesses. What she says is a coping mechanism, to not make it sound like the witnesses actually believed their own senses, what they saw and heard, but that they depended on Johnny. Again, it's easier for proud people to engage in wishful thinking than face reality. In the following, we once again observe just how careful she is not to defame the witnesses. Notice the micropauses and self-repairs.
Did they all come in and lie in court?
I am not here to call any of his witnesses any names. I'm here to just kind of talk about it from what it felt like for me as a person who sat there.
But implicitly, she has said a lot about the witnesses and jurors already. She's more than implied that they weren't able to separate their alleged admiration for Johnny from their own experiences. She has indeed shown her low opinion of them implicitly. Next, it sounds like she's finally holding herself accountable. However, she inserts words that tell us what's really on her mind. People tell the truth even when they don't want to. Their linguistic choices reveal what's really going on inside of them.
When I asked his lawyers, why do you think you won? And the answer I got was, because she never took responsibility for anything she did in the marriage.
I did do and say horrible, regrettable things throughout my relationship. I behaved in horrible, almost unrecognizable to myself ways. I have so much regret. I freely and openly and voluntarily talked about what I did. I talked about the horrible language. I talked about being pushed to the extent where I didn't even know the difference between, right and wrong. I will always continue to feel like I was a part of this, like I was the other half of this relationship, because I was. And it was ugly and could be very beautiful. It was very, very toxic.
However, saving face is essentially more important to her. The first time we notice this is when she says that she behaved in unrecognizable to herself ways, indicating that her default mode is very different. The second time is when she says that she's freely, openly, and voluntarily talked about what she did. This shows a high level of self-awareness, as it's virtue signaling language meant to portray her in a positive light, as if she has nothing to hide, which unintentionally begs the question, is she hiding something or holding something back? The third time is when she uses passive voice and says that she has talked about being pushed. Linguistically, passive voice relieves her of accountability, which is the reverse of what she's trying to do at this point in the interview. So even when she's supposed to be showing that she can hold herself accountable, she's unable to. A person's language has a way of betraying them. Leave a comment to let us know what you think about this interview. And if you're not yet subscribed, consider subscribing for more videos.